Temple Mount, Jerusalem, summer 2013. Just 164 feet from the Temple Mount's southern wall, archaeologist Dr. Eilat Mazar makes a stunning discovery. An inscribed earthenware jug that dates back 3,000 years, to the time of King Solomon. The discovery may confirm what many historians have suggested, that Solomon's temple once stood at this exact location. In addition to the historical significance, the find intrigues treasure hunters, as it may indicate that other, much more valuable relics may also lie buried at Temple Mount.
Solomon's temple was built in the 10th century BC by the great king of Israel, Solomon. And it was built initially to house the Ark of the Covenant.
According to the Hebrew Bible, Solomon's temple was constructed upon direct orders from God. Although it is best known for having housed the Ark of the Covenant, and possibly even the Holy Grail, some treasure hunters believe another relic of profound historical significance may lie buried at the site. A relic that ancient astronaut theorists claim is of extraterrestrial origin. Solomon's Ring.
One of the lesser-known great treasures of history is Solomon's Ring, and it is said that this ring had the name of God engraved upon it in a very secret and cryptic way.
The ring was representative of the authority from beyond this world. The wielder of that ring would be able to compel any and all who recognized that source of extraterrestrial power to do whatever he wished.
In the Islamic records, the Ring of Solomon was given to him by angels. It gave him magical powers. Through this ring, he could control the jinn, or genies.
According to both the Quran and the Hebrew Talmud, Solomon's Ring also aided him in constructing the temple itself.
Somehow this ring gave him the power to control otherworldly beings, for want of a better term. Demons, you can call them genies, or you can call them extraterrestrials.
Solomon was in need of a higher technology in order to build his temple. He knew that he had to contact Ashmodai, later known by the Greek name Asmodeus, who was the head of the daemons. With this ring, clearly not of human origins, Ashmodai was hereby compelled and required to provide for Solomon whatever he needed to fulfill the building of the Temple of God. So Ashmodai gave to Solomon something called the shamir. Now, the shamir is described in traditional literature as this little worm that you put on the stone and it would cut it precisely.
The shamir was a quote-unquote worm that could cut and drill through even the hardest of stones rather with ease. What if this shamir was some type of laser cutting device?
Is it possible that Solomon possessed an extraterrestrial device wielding incredible power? Power that gave its bearer control and command of otherworldly beings? And if so, might this explain the mystery surrounding the disappearance of Solomon's Ring?
Solomon's Ring, like many of the other temple treasures, like the Ark of the Covenant, were considered too hot to handle by average human beings. These things were concealed when the time was made proper.
In 586 BC, the first temple, Solomon's temple, was destroyed, sacked by Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king. One theory holds that the most fabulous treasure we can almost conceive of, gold, silver, the Ark of the Covenant, possibly Solomon's Ring, are buried in a secret chamber beneath the Temple Mount.
the village of Rennes-le-Chateau, France. January 29th, 1953. Marie Desnarnaud, a frail 85-year-old woman, lies on her deathbed, promising to divulge a long-held secret about a vast treasure. But a recent stroke has left her unable to speak or write, and her secret dies with her.
Before Marie's death, she had promised to tell someone the secret. I will tell you the secret, and you will be rich beyond your wildest dreams. And what she said was, the people of this village walk on enough gold to make them wealthy for 100 years, and they have no idea. And the secret, she was never able to speak it after she had her stroke. So what was Marie talking about?
Legends of a vast gold treasure hidden at Rennes-le-Chateau date all the way back to the 5th century. When after sacking Rome in 410 AD, Germanic warriors known as the Visigoths made their way to the area with all the stolen treasure they could carry. But when they abandoned the region some 200 years later, they reportedly left some of their ill-gotten wealth behind.
The Visigoths were known to have buried treasure with their dead. So Rennes-le-Chateau became significant because of this idea that there might be gold buried there.
For hundreds of years, the rumors of buried treasure persisted, although no tangible evidence of it was ever found. But then, in 1891, a young parish priest named Béranger Saunière was restoring the local church when, according to popular legend, he discovered something that turned him into an extremely wealthy man almost overnight.
This wealth that he had was part of a vast golden treasure that was kept underground in this church in a weird series of catacombs. These catacombs at Rennes-le-Chateau were ancient. They'd been there long before the church had been built. And here is an area that's known to have these caves that were used by the Visigoths.
I lived here 16 years, and we know here's a tunnel under this garden. It comes along this way from the castle until to the church, and it runs in this way.
There have been people who've been coming here since the 1950s in search of gold, and some have found it. The question is whether finding gold is everything there is to this mystery, or whether it's just the first step along many steps to go before we actually uncover the real mystery of Rennes-le-Chateau.
Although Father Saunière claimed to have come upon this vast wealth by chance, many believe he actively searched for the Visigoth gold, and that much more still lies hidden in the catacombs beneath the church. But even more mysterious than the priest's possible discovery of gold was his strange behavior afterwards, a behavior that became reflected in the design of the church itself.
Béranger Saunière is a guy who goes in search of ancient documents, who goes in search of certain specific knowledge in alchemical circles. So what we have found in an awful lot of alchemical processes is the importance of gold. What happens next is that he begins to build a church. He builds it according to a plan. This plan is make contact with the divine. And so I think Saunière realized that certain metals could be transformed into something which truly made it a spiritual experience.
Might the golden treasure Father Saunière supposedly unearthed have contained more than just monetary value? Could it have held some otherworldly knowledge? The priest confided in only one other person as to the origin of this mysterious wealth: his housekeeper, Marie Desnarnaud. But what was the secret that they shared? Ancient astronaut theorists believe a clue may lie in the inscription found over the door of the church.
Berenger Saunier placed an inscription over the door that people have been talking about for 100 years. The inscription says, Terribilis est locus iste. It's mistakenly translated most often as this place is terrible. But in fact, the inscription comes from the Old Testament, from the book of Genesis. Jacob has a dream about a ladder that connects heaven to earth, where humans could connect to the divine. So when you look at the Old Testament translation, what it really says is, this place is awesome.
Is this inscription from the Old Testament of the Hebrew Bible a reference to something divine? Or might it point to an extraterrestrial connection?
I believe Rennes-le-Chateau could be a stargate to another world. This is based on the inscription placed above the entrance to the church by Berenger Saunier. Why would this priest put this inscription there unless he's indicating that this awesome and tremendously powerful place, Rennes-le-Chateau, is a gateway to the stars? Rennes-le-Chateau, to me, is one of the spookiest and most powerful places I've ever been. The ground there is oozing mystery.
We know that people have said that Rennes-le-Chateau is a place for UFOs. We know people have reported time slips, and people have said that they have had encounters with the devil. So there is definitely something about that area which suggests that for centuries, very strange and bizarre things happen.
Qumran, the West Bank. It was here, between 1947 and 1956, that the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. Religious writings that include the earliest known surviving manuscripts of works from the Hebrew Bible. But one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, found in Cave 3, was much different than the rest. Known as the Copper Scroll, it is the only scroll that is not parchment or papyrus.
The first translation of the Copper Scrolls was probably done by John Allegro in 1956, and he immediately realized that it was a list of treasure, buried treasure.
The Copper Scroll is possibly the greatest treasure map in human history. It gives us 64 locations where a treasure that is worth potentially $2 billion could be found.
People assume that these 64 items of treasure had to have been buried or come from Jerusalem because there clearly were references to temple-type treasure.
A number of very intrepid explorers have tried to find the treasure, but no one has been successful yet. It has not been discovered in Jerusalem.
Does the vast treasure described in the Copper Scroll remain buried in Jerusalem to this day? Or is it possible that it has remained hidden for all these years because it's actually buried in another part of the world? Metallurgist and treasure hunter Robert Feather has spent years studying the Copper Scroll and believes that the treasure isn't that of the Israelites.
As a metallurgist, the first thing I noticed was you don't measure gold in kilograms, which is what they were doing. So I looked at it again, and interspersed amongst the ancient Hebrew letters were Greek letters, 14 Greek letters, and also the weight terms were Egyptian. And it's engraved on highly pure copper, 99.9%. I began to research it and realized the only place that you could find copper of that purity was in Egypt.
After examining the Copper Scroll from every angle, Robert came to the conclusion that the treasure does not lie in Jerusalem, but over 600 miles southwest in Egypt.
When you start to analyze the phraseology, you get things like Nahal Hagadol, which is great river. There's no great river near Jerusalem or in Judea at that time at all. The only great river, and it's always referred to in those same terms, is the Nile.
But most compelling of all Robert's finds was a name he found hidden within the text of the Copper Scroll.
I took the first 10 Greek letters and put them together and read the name Akhenaten. And I came to the conclusion the Copper Scroll was talking about Adamana, the capital city of Pharaoh Akhenaten.
Is it possible that the famous treasure of the Copper Scroll, millions of dollars in gold and silver, is really hidden not in Jerusalem, but somewhere in Amarna, Egypt? And if Robert Feather's analysis of the scroll is correct, why is there a connection to Akhenaten?
Akhenaten was known historically, or rather through modern history, as the heretical pharaoh.
Akhenaten banishes multiple gods and declares that there is only one god, Aten, and the Aten is the sun disk.
Ancient astronaut theorists contend that Aten was not merely a symbolic deity, but based on something Akhenaten actually witnessed in the sky.
Akhenaten and other Atenists are seen worshiping this special disk of the sun that is reaching down to touch them. And you have to wonder if this sun disk isn't a representative of some kind of alien spaceship or flying saucer.
Roslin Chapel, Scotland. Perched atop a hill overlooking the village of Roslin, 7 miles south of Edinburgh, sits this medieval 15th century church. Some say that hidden on the grounds, in secret chambers within the church, are some of the world's greatest lost relics, including the treasure of the Knights Templar. This elite band of warrior monks had been based at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem during the Christian Crusades. They were also rumored to have been in possession of many valuable religious artifacts, including the most valuable golden relic of all, the Holy Grail, the cup used by Jesus during the Last Supper.
The Knights Templar began excavating at Solomon's Temple. It is said that they discovered secret caverns which held a huge hoard of gold artifacts. At the time of the sacking of Solomon's Temple, the treasure there suddenly vanished. They then took this treasure to Scotland and buried it at Roslin Chapel.
Roslin Chapel is one of the most fascinating possible recreations of Solomon's Temple. It literally is a Holy Grail temple that was constructed by William St. Clair and is designed to be a repository of Holy Grail secrets. When it was created, it had the most wonderful and fantastic symbolism perhaps anywhere in the world.
Could Roslin Chapel really have been built to house the Holy Grail? Some believe the architecture of the chapel is adorned with mysterious messages and symbols that reveal the secret whereabouts of the Cup of Christ.
And here we are. This is Roslin Chapel. William St. Clair was responsible for building the chapel. He was a very rich individual. He was the Chancellor of Scotland at the time.
We see this extraordinary, gifted, brilliant man collecting the wisdom traditions from around the world and instilling all of those into Roslin Chapel.
Among the many carvings found in the walls of Roslin Chapel are faces called the Green Men, pagan deities that represent growth and rebirth. Some believe these strange faces provide a clue that the chapel truly does hold the Holy Grail.
The carvings themselves have a dual meaning. They always have had a dual meaning.
The Green Man appears in over 110 different locations. As you watch the progression of the Green Man from east to west, that progression represents the passing of time.
So all the youngest of all the Green Man carvings are on the eastern wall, and towards the west, they become older.
This symbolizes the ultimate secrets of nature, and it makes one wonder if, in fact, the Grail is connected with these secrets and the presence of the Green Man in this Holy Grail chapel.
But if the Holy Grail truly does reside in Roslin Chapel, where might it be hidden? Some believe it lies within an ornate pillar called the Apprentice Pillar, and at least one person has actually attempted to retrieve it.
We actually have a story which is known to be factual. A person came into the chapel with an axe who was going to be intent on hacking down the Apprentice Pillar because he was convinced that the Grail was actually inside.
What is the Grail? What if I was to say the Grail is your DNA? Because it is your past and it is your future. And the very interesting thing is, when you look at that pillar, you see that it is actually the DNA column.
Might all these mysterious carvings that have been linked to the Holy Grail indicate that the chalice used by Jesus at the Last Supper was something more than just a drinking vessel?
The whole story is very fascinating to the ancient astronaut theory. Wolfram von Eschenbach, for example, suggests that the Holy Grail arrived from the stars. And the question is, what did he mean by that? It is often described as this vessel that had blinking red lights. Were the Templar in possession of some technological device?